Hello everybody, my name is Max. I'm going to be talking about the Flood today from Halo, if you know what that is. Uh, this is a subject I've been wanting to talk about for a while because I've noticed that a lot of people like the Flood, which is understandable, clearly, because who doesn't? They are annoying to some degree, but a lot of people like the Flood because of how they look and how they infect certain things. Um, the, the Flood is a little interesting to a certain degree because of the way they infect and stuff like that. Now the Flood in general are pretty smart, not like extremely. And the reason for that is because they're not they're meant to be around everything, everyone at their point in time. Everything that's all infected, they're supposed to be around. Now the infection forms, which are the little tentacle dudes that run around the floor and will infect, as their name suggests. They infect humans, the aliens, the elites, or the brutes. I don't think they infect the grunts. I've never seen that happen before. Maybe in the books it does, but who knows. The infection forms are really interesting because of how they work. Now, the process of turning it into a Flood, let's talk about that real quick. It's extremely brutal. From your neck being snapped, your spinal column being attacked by the infected, of course, your organs being repurposed for something useful for the Flood, or just being completely ejected out of the body. Nerve exploding, stuff like that. Well, when they bury into you, they first lock onto your spinal cord. Keep in mind that you're wrestling them the entire time. So this is extremely painful for the host. Well, as soon as they get into your body, they start breaking bones, exploding nerves, repurposing your organs so you'll fit their needs. Ejecting, the Flood injects its head out of usually the torso, or where the head used to be the target, breaking the neck, shifting the head to the right shoulder or right torso area, and from that point, the host is usually alive during this entire thing. Neck being broken, they're most likely going to be alive the entire time. And then when you get fully infected, some targets die, some targets stay alive through the entire thing, not being able to control their body, but being able to see what their body is doing, and the Flood's doing with them. From killing other people to being guarding a certain point. Now, this doesn't happen to all targets. Some turn into stalkers, some turn into carriers, some turn into just information, basically, data banks, basically. Now the Flood are they get extremely smarter when a grave mine is made, a fully fledged grave mine. Now how that happens is when an infected form infects something.
Coordinates attached.
Hold on.
Pod is structurally sound, but the fabricator's bust. Requesting assistance. 7 out.
Signal coordinates corrupted. Approximate transmission origin recorded to data bank.
Well, when when a infection form locks onto, for say, a brute or an elite. Now, depending on the information that they go through in their head, because the infected forms will go through your memories as it infects you. It'll check all your memories of everything, from family to data that is useful. Some of it will just throw away, like family stuff and stuff like that. We'll just throw it away completely. Well, if the body is useful in that way, the flood will just have you turned into a grave mine of sorts. They attach you to a grave mine and leave you there. Now, keep in mind, you've already gone through physical pain. This is where the mentally pain comes from. They start driving through your head toward basically just ripping apart your memories, trying to figure out what you have is useful. So, this is where this begins. If they do, they touch you to a grave mine. Now the grave mine gets smarter because you've been attached. They know what you know. So, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. When a grave mine learns some things, all the flood do. Now this behavior is called a hive mind. What it is, and this is actually in real life as well. This happens with bees as well. When a bee is close to another bee, they know their thoughts. Well, with the flood, they go a little bit beyond that. If the grave mine learned something, all the other floods know it as well. Now, for carriers and combat forms of the flood, like I said, they go through an extremely painful process of neck snapping, spinal column being absolutely destroyed, organs get repurposed, nerves explode, making room for the flood and building your body for what they need. Now, depending on what situation you is, you're also going to get turned into a carrier form, which we've never seen happen in, I think, any of the Halos so far. From what I see, it looks like the back of the target just gets basically expanded to allow the infection forms to incubate in their back, and when time need be, the carrier just dies and explodes open, sending out infection forms. Now, in the books, there's a combat carrier form, which is basically mixed the two together. The back of the target does the same thing. It expands, blows up, and infection forms are released, but without killing the target. So the combat form will still run around and attack and still be functional after their back has been erupted. Which seems a little bit weird, considering that most flood don't really need that, considering that they're like the most dangerous thing in the game, because they play only by survival and they don't care what you are, who you are. If you're infectable, they'll infect you. If you're, simple as that. As it turns out, even the Spartans can be infected. Now, in some of the games, like Halo 4, in Halo 4, in the infection mode, you can see what the infected Spartan is kind of like. It's just basically a human that's got jagged teeth, no eyes, and looks kind of weird. And one of their arms has turned into a type of, it looks like an energy sword, basically, but composed out of flesh and bones and muscle, which is brutal in its own right.
Welcome aboard, Captain.
Because you have to imagine what they do to, turn your arm into that. But keep in mind, this is the Spartan we're talking about. No, not just some ordinary human being. The Spartan is used as, Master Chief is a Spartan of immense power. He can run, jump, think faster than a normal human being. He's got immense strength. Well, in a facility, they keep the flood there, and they make special Spartan armor to be there, so just in case of a breakthrough of the flood, they escape, and hopefully the Spartan's armor will protect them, which is usually the case, but sometimes that all fails. Spartan gets infected. Now, in Halo 2, I think Anniversary Mode, that's a better representation of an infected Spartan, but without the energy sword, because in that one they actually hold an energy sword. It does look cool though, it's like red instead of blue. In that form, the body is basically the same, but the head, that's a double difference. The skull of the target has been completely pushed out of the Spartan's helmet. The visor has been broken out. The infection form's head is poking out of the visor where the visor should be, coming out of the mouth of the target. Now, these Spartans are so dangerous because they're now infected with the flood. And keep in mind that, like I said, they will turn targets with immense data that could be useful for, I don't know, say flying Covenant ships, human ships, so on and so forth. They will attach to a grave mine. Now, Spartans, they are basically used for everything. They know how to use special weapons, they know how to use Covenant weapons, they know how to fly ships, know passwords and stuff like that for a bunch of different things. Hi, Horse. Talking about the flood from Halo. Don't worry about it. Now, these things are so dangerous. Instead of just going for, try to contain it, kill it, whatever, blah 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 blah, what you think what normal people do, they would just try to eliminate it, hands-on. Well, in this case, they don't do that. They go straight to nuclear. They throw nukes at it. They just want to destroy it, period. They don't... They don't, baby it. They go straight for nuclear stuff. They throw nukes, same other things, warheads, got those giant ships with the giant cannons, they use those. They go for everything. Just to make sure that they do not escape, because if that gets away, things could go down very, very badly. Which may sound a bit extreme, considering that another Spartan can take on another Spartan. This is a Flood Spartan we're talking about, different. Way stronger, because the Flood can use the strength and weaknesses of the target. The Spartans are made specifically not to have any weaknesses and built to be extremely strong. From being able to take on armies. Just a few Spartans can take on armies and stuff. like I said, this may not seem like a huge thing because Spartans can kill Spartans. Did I not mention that the infection forms usually go there? Well, like I said, only in that specific facility, or other facilities of a flood, do they have armor that specifically protects them from the flood. So other Spartans, say for Master Chief, can and will be infected if they allow it. See the problem there? So not all Spartans are built to take on or be around the flood like that. And as y'all know, the Master Chief is basically the best Spartan right now. Being able to take on dozens of elites and brutes and stuff like that. But then we get onto the different forms of infected for, say, Stalker, Tank, Needler, blah blah blah, Carrier, Combat form. I would also like to keep in mind that the infected, they don't play by what you think they would. They only play by survival. And this is proven at the fact that the Covenant, when I think they're going to use the rings in Halo 3, I don't remember what the cause of it was, but they are going to do something, and the Flood says will help Master Chief to stop them. Well, as soon as they do that, as soon as they help, they immediately go to the fact that they try to attack and kill Master Chief as soon as the job is done. Which just proves the fact, more or less, that the Flood do not care if you help them. They just want to infect and infest as much stuff as possible to survive. Which is why they use the rings to kill them. Which is definitely saying something, the fact that they would go to such an extent. You know, infected Spartan, they send full-on nukes. They don't even, no, they go full-on nukes. They make sure that it is going to die and be dead and stay dead. Now that should say something, considering that the Flood don't seem smart. Yeah, they're smart enough to be quite lethal to destroy anything, basically. Now, if you go back to Halo 3, when you go into their giant nest, how that exactly happens, I'm not entirely sure. It seems like the Flood just takes over, like grows and stuff. I'm not sure how that exactly works. But I would also like to note that the Gravemind has once made a deal with Master Chief and the Arbiter in one of the games. I forgot what game it was, but they did in fact make a deal with Master Chief and Arbiter to have them help. Now once again, that doesn't seem like a huge feat, but that shows that they are smart enough to do what they gotta do to survive. from making deals to asking or helping Master Chief to doing quite a bit of things. It's quite nuts that they will go to that length. Considering that how dangerous they already are on their own terms. Like, these infected or the flood is just absolutely insane. I mean, honestly, why do they need help at all? They're tough on their own rights. They're just about as anything as you can get. They're not just some big pushover. No, these things are
Rigged for silent running.
quite lethal and dangerous on their own. Now, the grave mines, however, I'm not sure exactly how dangerous they are. I'm not sure if they can even move. Now, to put that in perspective, I don't think they can move, but they could probably do some damage compared to how big they are and stuff, and they're probably going to be guarded by tons of infected combat forms and other things, needlers, tanks. You get the gist. So, it can get pretty brutal. Now, I'd also like to note that the Flood seems to only be a melee type style, which sounds really weird to me because the Flood are pretty damn smart from being able to do basically anything. Yeah, they're pretty damn smart. But interesting enough, they tend to grow like these giant claws out of their host arm, left or right, and use them at close combat. Now, there is some Flood that you see that shoots, but most of the time they go straight for the claws, which leads me to the whole gig about their melee thing. Why do they do this? I have no idea, and probably a lot of people don't know. But it does make one lethal attack. The, per se, tank forms, the big brutes of the bunch that actually talk to Master Chief. I think during that little scene, those things are massive. They're basically hunters but melee instead of shooting. These things can take a beating. I think in legendary mode, they can just downright kill you in one hit. Needlers are the only ranged one that I know of that is actually infected by an infected form and has been turned. I'm not sure how that one works. It seems that it can cling on walls, ceilings, and shoot green needles. Which I don't really understand where those come from, but hey, Flood, so be it. But the tank forms can also have a really interesting other ability. They can actually spawn an infected form, which kind of makes them a carrier as well. When they're in tank form and they have the face of the infected form coming out of their giant torso, they throw them up basically, coming out of their mouth and stuff like that, and spitting out these infected forms. Now, keep in mind, these guys have a huge torso, but the middle section of their body has holes in it, which brings me to something that I would like to talk about. why do they do this? Well, there's a few theories I have. The infected form takes the human, arbiter, or brute body and combines the two, carrier and combat form. Well, that doesn't make any sense because in the books they don't look like a tank form, and nor do they spit them out. So that's where that stops. Now, this one is the one I more than likely believe. I think that it turns a carrier into a combat form, but now don't get me wrong, I'm pretty sure multiple infected forms can go into a single target. And that's what I think is happening here. I think in tank forms, and stalker forms, and needler form, more than one infected go into a single target, develop the body even more, and more, and more, and more. So when enough infected get into a body, it turns into a tank form. Well, considering that they only need one infected to be that, it starts spitting out the other infected, but keeps them in until they need to be released. Now, this is just a theory, but it seems about right. I'm not sure if that's how it works, but that seems about right for the most part. Now, the needler form, I'm not sure how that takes place. I don't know how that would work, but I don't see where the spikes would come in. I don't see where the stalker can turn it into a needler. It makes no sense to me. Now, for grunts, on the other hand, that seem not to be able to be infected, why is that? Well, I think there's one option here that would mostly make sense. They're just too weak and too fragile. Hi. Wait, aren't you supposed to be doing school? Pretty sure. Uh-oh. What, another ghost leviathan? I've been swimming for the past... how many minutes now? Well, like I said, anyway, the needler thing don't make any sense to me. I don't understand how a stalker turns into a needler, and so on and so forth. Well, the whole grave mine incident. So yeah. But for the most part, infected forms and the flood in general, they're a very dangerous target that did indeed get wiped out in Halo 3. Which really, really, really sucks, because I think they were definitely everyone's favorite enemy, to be exactly right. Like, same in Gears of War. in Gears of War, everyone loved the Lampets, but then were destroyed. Why was that? I have no idea, to be honest. I mean, I see why, because, you know, the whole lore and stuff got to be right, you know, being the Flood being so dangerous. You get the point. But Flood being dangerous, they got to destroy it, so on and so forth. And yeah, it's kind of interesting, to say the least, is how that works. Uh, I really don't know what else to say about that, because there's not too many things that you can really say about that, except for the fact that they were destroyed, and that's about it. We're not really getting them back. I believe, um, in one of the Halo trailers, for which trailer it was, the Halo game might have already came out. I have no idea. But in one of the trailers, it kind of sounds like the voice from the Flood in Halo, which is a little interesting, to say the least. Uh, but who knows what the plan is with the Flood? Who knows if they're coming back? Who knows? It would be nice to see them come back. Let's be honest here. It would be, but who
The
knows?
head standard.
We may never see them again. We might. We never know until they eventually show up or they don't.
Ahead flanked. Emergency speed.
But that's the only thing I have to talk about today. Hope you guys enjoyed. I will talk to y'all later.